Well, hello, and happy Friday to you. Coming to you from a little bit of sun that I have in the garden. There's a lot of noise going on around me, but I want to get right into it and just speak to something that's been coming up that a lot of people have been triggered to. As you know, I really am on a mission to help people to heal from unresolved childhood trauma, and a lot of the trauma that we don't even know is running our lives, which is coming from intergenerational and ancestral trauma, as well as rewoundings of things that weren't healed perhaps in our teens or our 20s, and to just know that we can return to a place of trust when we know and understand, firstly, what our attachment style is, and really starting to understand how we tick and how we were formed as these innocent little sponges that we were as children, and where we were sort of deeply imprinted on, and then subsequently can go, many, many years doing a great job at living life, and then out of the blue we get a chronic healing crisis, or our relationships break apart, or things start to happen that are really an indication that there's something that we're ready to look at and heal and get support with. And what we talk about in the world of psychology and neuroscience as these trauma bonds. So if you've sort of been feeling why can't I get off this old hamster wheel? Why I feel so stuck, when logically maybe you know that you need to leave a relationship or a job that's sucking your soul. And we just don't know how to stop this abusive cycle, because you don't even know what it is. It's just a feeling. So if this resonates with you, please join me inside of this tribe, and start by taking the ACE test over at Sarah Jane, accessyourtruenature.com. So it'll start to give you a deeper understanding of where perhaps you are energetically connected to people that maybe aren't good for you, or maybe why you can't leave relationships. This goes way beyond being afraid of being alone, or fear of the unknown, or having some insecurities within your own self, but it has a lot to do with those things and codependent patterns. But why we can stay stuck. I certainly did that for a long time in a relationship that I knew it wasn't good for me. It needed to end, and logically and cognitively I knew all those things, but I felt so trapped that I just couldn't do it, and it nearly actually took my life. So one of the things I want you to really understand too is, if you're relating to this topic, please don't immediately go into judgment of yourself. That's not what this is about. This is not about making you wrong, your parents wrong, but really just giving you an opportunity to understand why you did certain things, and how you can start to gain some insight on how to move forward in a healthy way, and start calling in the relationships that you want, including learning maybe for the first time how to love yourself. So this is not about, shooting yourself into a corner, or beating yourself up, or wrecking yourself for guilt because you saw the signs and didn't do anything about it. And I mean, I certainly did that. The red flags were there right before my first meeting with my first husband, and I did it anyway. So just know, when you know better, you do better. And even if intuitively you're having those kind of vibes that are going on, those little niggles, and you didn't listen to that person, maybe this was because you didn't have the safety to actually even deal with that at that time in your life. So I want to talk about trauma bonding, and bonding in general. We can look at it as mother and child, skin to skin, bonding with everybody that we have a relationship with. So when we share our lives and our experiences together, and love and trust and sex and intimacy and conversation and closeness and children and marriage, and on it goes, we're wired to connect, and when we're sharing experiences, that's bonding. And a lot of the reasons why sometimes we become bonded with other people, and who we choose to bond with, of course, is a whole another story. If we're coming from a place of not knowing how to love ourselves or pick the people in our lives that are good with us, if we don't have that discernment because we've learned to not trust our intuitive process, and we're calling in toxic people or having internal wounds that we haven't healed or dealt with, those wounds are ultimately expressing on a subconscious level who we're calling into our lives and attracting. And a lot of times it can be abusive and unhealthy, and there's a lot of noise going on now. So I hope you can hear me. But just know this is a biological process that can happen, and it's kind of out of our control, so to speak. And it makes leaving a relationship very difficult because we're sharing intimacy, we're sharing trust with this person. We've bonded with this person that then becomes very difficult to regulate. Got a poor recording. But, if we haven't learned how to have healthy standards and we haven't our caregivers, we're going to bond with people that we shouldn't be bonding with. And regardless of who we're bonding with, it's very difficult to break these bonds because our physical body doesn't know that this is an unhealthy attachment. If all you've known is hurt as love, then you're going to find people that hurt you and think that that's what love is. So it's not your fault. You're just not able to tell whether or not someone is good or bad for you. You're just going to form those bonds regardless. And a trauma bond is when we're bonding with someone who is unhealthy for us. They're abusive, they're toxic, they're narcissistic. However, you know that they're not good for you. And trauma is what happens over time. So this is the chronic, unpredictable, toxic stress. And now my dogs are barking. So just know, this is not like physical abuse or sexual abuse that maybe happens once and it's instant and then it's over. This is a gradual thing that happens over time. So the trauma happens over a long period of time where you're gaslighted or manipulated or shamed, and it's very passive aggressive. But there's a lot of these tactics that are used on you over a long period of time, and that's what creates trauma. And of course, the other factor that has something to do with trauma bonding is this blueprint of what you deem a relationship to look like. And that blueprint is always created in childhood. It's programmed into our subconscious and in utero on how your parents, who have the most influence on you, your mother and a father, you and your child witnessing their relationships and also picking it up on maybe where your mother wasn't safe in utero. And know this, it doesn't have to be physical abuse, right? Emotional abuse is just as bad. Neglect is a trauma. But if your mom was passive aggressive to your dad all the time, or your dad was narcissistic, and maybe your mother was codependent, that's abuse right there. So even though your mom and dad may be raging alcoholics and were beating each other, they're still abusing themselves in different ways emotionally, and you witnessed that as a child. So your energetic blueprint is that's what a normal relationship looks like, right? It's normalized. And then as we grow up, we realize that, maybe that shouldn't have happened. But because it's all you ever knew and all you ever saw, it becomes part of your blueprint. And this is where you need to get really honest and notice what your blueprint is so that you can begin to heal and change it. So if you grow up with abuse, at the back of your mind, way deep inside, you've actually built up a tolerance for abuse being love. And this is why when we're not aware of what our blueprint looks like, and we go out in the world and we start dating or we start forming partnerships in business, because we've seen this abuse over time, we don't have the self-love or the discernment within ourselves to say, no, I'm not going to tolerate that. We don't have the boundaries to say, no. We don't know how to stand up for ourselves. We don't know how to set boundaries. And if we know how to set boundaries, then we can enforce them when somebody crosses the line between what's respectful and what's abuse. So I want to just share a couple of the symptoms to know whether you are perhaps experiencing a trauma bond or have in the past. And that is that sort of feeling of feeling stuck, that logically you shouldn't be in this relationship, that this person's doing things all the time that are hurtful and abusive to you, and you just keep taking it. And for some reason, you just keep going backwards and forwards and hoping that it's going to change. Another form is when your family and friends start to see a difference in you. They can see that you're not the person that used to be funny, and you've lost a spark that you used to have with life, and you're not excited or happy. Maybe your personality changed. And I know that was certainly the case for me when my family and friends started to get really concerned that I was isolating and withdrawing and had a lot of suicidal ideation, and we're saying, why are you staying with this person when your life could be so much better? And again, this is not a definite, trauma bonding simulation, but this is a symptom of trauma bonding. And one of I think the most absolute biggest symptoms is that you actually start believing that this person is still a good person. And again, when abuse is happening over time, this chronic unpredictable stress goes on and on and on, you've seen glimpses of what could be a beautiful relationship. You've had love with that person. You've seen them be kind, and the person that you actually fell in love with. And then that person goes away, and then they come and go. And this is what shows up for me and having a very disorganized attachment, is the come here, go away. But because you project what you really, really want to see and what you want back in that person that you fell in love with, or even that belief that, this person underneath all the crap is a good person, and I just want them to come back, and you keep hoping that that's going to happen because your desire is to see that person in their true highest form, but they keep showing you the opposite of that. And I think that's really hard, especially when you're in relationships and you've seen a human being that you loved and was amazing and you fell in love with, and it's really hard to accept that that person was just an illusion, that maybe it was just a masquerade, that they were just love bombing you or messing with your mind, and it was all manipulation. And it's a really hard one, to not beat yourself up and make yourself feel guilty, say, how could I not have seen that? And if you are, a highly sensitive empath like me, of course we want to see the best in people. We don't want to think the world is an unsafe place, that everyone is unkind or has an agenda. And I see this a lot in the work that I do with the wounded woman archetype, where we don't trust women, especially. But just because you see a glimpse of somebody that's kind of nice for a minute doesn't mean that that's who they truly are. Especially when they haven't even proved that on a consistent basis with you. And it's certainly not easy to do when you have had a relationship with somebody. You've been intimate, maybe you've been married, maybe you have kids or years, or businesses together. It doesn't matter how long it is. It's never easy to accept that that person that's standing in front of you right now is the reality of it. And I'm not trying to downplay it, that you're believing this person is good when they're showing you that they're not. You have to start to have a reality check and actually look at what is in front of you and what's being triggered in yourself to try and keep that abuse in place. And you have to actually know what your standards are, especially if you had people with high standards that were impossible to reach. You need to practice daily discernment. That you need to be careful that you're not projecting your fantasies onto other people. Allow people to show them who they are, and then you get to decide, you get to discern, to trust them or not. And that's the intuitive process that, like any muscle, we have to practice. And again, this isn't about looking for perfection. It's about saying, what's the bare minimum to keep this person in my life? And not take whatever comes along, because you were never taught how to love yourself. We're never taught that it's perfectly acceptable to have healthy boundaries, and if someone crosses them, that they might need to leave your life. And these are really important things to understand and be compassionate and gentle with your child parts that are addicted to that as a sense of what love looked like. And know that everything on a biochemical and a neurophysical point, you're going to go through highs and lows. And if you're having lows and someone's pulling away, and you just keep having faith and you keep at it and you keep trying to, get them to wake up and be who they are. But we have to get really honest with ourselves. And when we are experiencing a trauma bond, we have to know, that I constantly feel up and down, and I'm on a roller coaster ride, and I just want to be near this person because this person is a good person, and you keep going back and back for more. And you have to just understand that this is an addiction. It's way beyond you just having a bond with somebody. This is exactly that. It's an addiction, and in order to break that habit or addiction, you have to accept that it's not going to be easy. So how do you even start to break that old habit of addiction? Like any addiction, you have to accept that this is an addiction. You have to accept that you've been in an abusive relationship. You have to accept that the person that you're with or you're trying to escape from, that they are not who you think they are. That person doesn't exist anymore. Whether they are narcissistic, whether they're emotionally abusive, whether they're highly manipulative, it doesn't matter. They're also have unresolved attachment wounds, but they're not yours to fix. And when you can start to see them in their true colors of who they really are, or their own damage and wounds that they have within themselves are coming up, and you're being blamed as the trigger, that you're the one that's making them be like that. And you need to be really kind with yourself and know there's addiction running on some level to this pain, to the back and forth, to the overwhelm, and that this process of remembering who you are and claiming your power is going to take work and support. So just know, there's always somebody else there who's had their own version of trauma. And I'm not saying that for you to feel bad about yourself, but to encourage you and motivate you to know that you are far more resilient than you give yourself credit. And you are stronger than you think you are. And I think the next thing that you need to do is to get really honest with yourself and look at what makes you happy. So many of my clients don't even know what makes them happy anymore when they were last deeply happy. They feel numbed out and dissociated. And a lot of the time when you ask yourself these questions, you're going to start to see what makes you unhappy, which is a good thing, because you're going to start to get underneath the root cause of some of these trauma wounds, these attachment styles that you've developed to keep yourself safe, because maybe love wasn't modeled in a healthy way for you. Or it wasn't safe for you to ask for what you want. And this is where you start to go at the pace of your body, so you don't flood your nervous system with all the things you don't want to gain, and do the inner work, do the shadow work, to really start to understand compassionately and gently how you can practice being more self-loving to you and stop this cycle of abuse and judgment and all the ways that you've set yourself up to deny, reject, and abandon yourself so that nobody else gets to hurt you that deeply again. And look at, what are your standards, and where do you need to tighten up on some of your boundaries, and where are you not willing to be selfish and protect your own energy from energy vampires or people that are trying to manipulate you. And look at what are the kind of people you want to call into your life that can see you and honor and witness you and embrace your gifts, and also be there for you to hold you to your standards when perhaps you want to start going into that old habit of beating yourself up again. This type of work, healing from these things, I have so many clients who are incredibly successful. They're entrepreneurs, they're making a lot of money, they're successful in their work. And they all say the same thing, that it's harder to do this internal shadow work and learn how to love with ourselves and heal some of these attachment wounds than it is to run a, multi-million-dollar business. And, there's a lot of people that are saying this. I think Les Brown was one of them that said that, I probably bastardized this, but he said the easiest thing he did was to make $1 million, but what it took to get there was the hardest thing. So, don't get discouraged in this process. When you're trying to leave a relationship, whether that's in a job or a love relationship or going no contact with some kind of narcissistic family member, don't get discouraged. This is a difficult process, and you're breaking an addiction right now. So I think that, when people get so overwhelmed in trying to figure out how they're going to actually do it physically, they get overwhelmed because they're looking at where they want to go, right? How am I going to leave? What do I have to do to get there? Oh my gosh, the practicalities are I need to move out. I need to get a job because I haven't worked for 20 years. And oh my gosh, am I going to damage the children? Am I going to not see my children? What's going to happen to my finances? Where am I going to live? Maybe I'm not ever going to find someone that really loves me, and maybe your clock is ticking and you want to have more babies, and your mind starts making up the story about all the places that it's going to go long and why it's not safe to leave and why you should stay and just suck it up. And this is where we get anxiety, and this is where we fall into depression, and where we get really, really stuck in fear, in the irrational fear, but also the very real fears. Is your life in danger? Are your kids going to be safe? And knowing that you're going to go back, and maybe because you've said you're going to do this. I certainly did this for years and years, where I said I'm going to leave, and then I beat myself up because I didn't. And when you start to sit in that space and just allow yourself time to start to really understand what you need and how to take care of yourself, because nobody else has shown you how to do that. And then you can just take one step. Maybe it's just having that tough conversation, or maybe it's about getting your CV up to date, or maybe it's about saying to a person, I don't want to see you anymore. And it's in taking those tiny little steps, one step, where you can start to return to a place of tapping back into your happiness and looking at what fills you up and what you need to feel loved and to create your own safety. And I say it all the time, inch by inch is a cinch, yard by yard is hard. So what if today you could just celebrate one thing you did differently today, even though your body and your nervous system is going to be kicking and screaming because you're going to start changing up what feels like a death to your nervous system, and it feels like death to the old story. And that the more that you can start doing this consistently and just build on that daily, inch by inch, minute by minute, your confidence will grow. You will feel stronger. You will have more clarity. You will have more focus to internally resource what you need in order to get you where you want to go, or away from what you're currently creating in your life. So if you find yourself backtracking or going back into those old, familiar, safe habits, they're called habits for a reason, because we're addicted to them, and nobody teaches us how to get resourceful or know that none of this is our fault when we're going through school or we're growing up, where perhaps our primary caregivers couldn't give us what we needed. And maybe your mom and dad did the best that they could with what they had, but they were also dealing with unresolved attachment wounds, and they couldn't hold that space for themselves, let alone show you anything different. So be gentle with yourself and just trust that you don't have to do this alone. I think one of the most important things that I learned on my own healing journey is that you're going to want to isolate. You're going to want to pull the covers over your head and never get out of bed again and push people away. But that's the moment that you need more than anything to just reach out and allow somebody else to hold you. We need a village to have eyes on us and tell us that we can rest. And to be alone feels like death to your reptilian brain. It feels like death to your nervous system, and it doesn't have to be that way. And if I can support you in any way, or somebody that may be needing to hear this, please share this with them, and just reach out. Send me a PM. Go and take the ACE test over on my website, and just know that the best thing that you can do is to allow other people to hold space for you. And tell them you don't need them to say anything. They don't need to have to fix you or come up with a solution. That you're just asking for them to hold a space for you to be able to verbally process what's going through your mind, and to just listen to you. God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. If we could just listen twice as much as we speak, it gives us opportunity to be more compassionate, to tap into our empathy, to open our hearts, and to share the most vulnerable parts and pieces of ourselves, even though we're afraid. So I hope this video has been helpful in just getting you to a place where you can understand on a deeper level that these programs run deep. These attachment wounds that we form pre-7-year-old, they're not limiting beliefs that you have. They were protective beliefs that kept you safe in a world that did not feel safe to you. And yes, they served you well then. And yes, some parts of them may still be working with you now, to create some form of attachment that is safe, that is loving. But there is an easier way to do this, and it starts when you just begin to treat yourself with more compassion and more self-love, and you begin to start to understand how you're wired. Because one of the things that I see, especially with my highly sensitive, empathic entrepreneurs who want to save the world, and I certainly fall in that category myself, is that we need to practice energy management. We need to know our no, and we need to trust our yeses, and we need to listen to our intuitive voice, our spidey senses that are always going to move us away from anything that doesn't feel safe. And we need to discern if this is rational or irrational fear that's running our lives, and then look at ways that we can then grow up our internal child parts, our fragmented parts and pieces of ourselves that form the belief that the world wasn't safe, or that you're always going to be alone, or that you're unlovable, or you're never going to be enough, and change your standards, reparent those parts so that they can come home to you, the secure adult that's in charge. Because until we have safety and a sense of connection to our physical bodies, nothing changes. We cannot create when we're in a state of fear, when we're literally responding to all the threats, perceived or imagined, that are going on around us. And we need to have that first as a really strong foundation, so that we can go out and get excited and use that vital life force energy that comes off our kidneys and our bladder, which are all around existential fear and control, to move us and excite us and exalt us, to set us free from these old trauma patterns that are running our lives, and proving our brain, which is a story making machine, right, that you see people can't be trusted, that you have to do everything on your own. And that's my mission, and that is my journey, my personal journey alongside you. I think we have a lot more in common than we might think, in that we all want to be loved, we all want safety and connection, and we all want to know that we matter, that we're making a difference in the world. And if I can support you in doing that, please reach out. I have a couple of sessions available for my birthday month at only 111 Rand, just you and me, together in a space that's going to give you a deeper understanding on some of these epigenetic markers that might be influencing the choices that you're making, and also to start to heal once you understand what your attachment wounds are. You know, are you avoidant? Are you ambivalent? Are you disorganized in how you create from this anxious state? And once you know that, and you know how it works, then you can start to use it to your advantage. And again, if you know someone that might want to be hearing this, might need this today, please share it. I'd love to hear your insights and some of the ways that you are healing from your unresolved childhood traumas. And wherever you find yourself, trust that you're enough, trust that you're loved, and open your arms to just receive the love that is so available to you. If you could just push your heart walls down, soften your barriers, have kind eyes, and just hold that space of love for yourself. And I'll meet you there. All right, take care. Bye. Mwah.